Welcome back to Artificial Antics, where Rico and Mike will talk about the implications and opportunities around artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning. In today's episode, Driving Change, Jack McMahon's AI journey in vehicle management, Mike and Rico will talk to Jack about the evolution of his businesses and the nuts and bolts of how AI wound up being the perfect fit for a particular set of challenges.
Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Mike from Artificial Antics. Pretty excited about our episode. This is episode 11 of the show, and I'm here with my co-host, Rico. Rico, how you doing tonight?
Pretty good, Mike. Thanks for the introduction, and we got a very exciting show tonight. We are actually going international tonight. We haven't talked to very many people from around the globe yet, so we're excited to talk to an entrepreneur that's doing some great things with AI. So, Jack, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Mike and Rico. Glad to be here. Really exciting topic. So something we're really passionate about at CMT Scanner, AI technology. But I guess let me take you back a little bit about me. So before I kind of go straight into that rabbit hole of AI.
Sure.
A bit of an interesting, I guess, journey to where we are today for me personally. I studied hotel management, so customer focused, really kind of in that realm where I spent almost a decade in that space, and I learned probably three things in that area. It was, I guess, the customer always comes first, and that's like in any business. Like, you're not a business unless you've got them and they're happy. The second thing was that it's interesting when you look at a hotel, you don't realize how many different departments there are within the hotel. So many different, like, behind the scenes, all these different departments operating, and they have different synergies working together. And then the third thing was managing your customers, your staff, and the owners of the hotel as well. So there are different shareholders within the business, and having to make sure they're all being accommodated. And I guess spending a decade there and then getting to a point where I was looking for something different. What's similar to that, and also interestingly, a lot of hotels are franchises, so operated by an owner who chooses to put a multinational label on their hotel to get, I guess, more brand awareness or such.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So what businesses are similar to that? I kind of started looking in the landscape of where I could use those skills, and it started to trigger that a lot of dealerships are franchise model. There's many departments within a dealership, your service, your sales, there's a lot of moving parts, and there's a lot of stakeholders, owners, staff, and it was so many similar things that I could kind of see myself going down. Yeah. So going from a completely different beast, which is hospitality, to dealerships, it sounds different, but when I looked at it, I was like, this is almost so similar.
Wow.
So personally, that's how I ended up in that space. So that was probably back in 2018. And what I thought was going to be going down the dealership space, I met an owner of a hail repair company. And hail damage repairs, we're talking about hail damage vehicles. I guess I was in that space of looking in the dealership space. So this particular company did a lot of work with dealers. When it hails, obviously the car yards are impacted. Hundreds of thousands of vehicles all at once, right?
Right.
So he was looking to scale that business, I guess, one, for insurers in doing those assessments on hail damaged vehicles, and two, dealers having to assess so many vehicles at the one point in time. Because it's one thing when you think you own a car, your car's been hit by hail, but when you put it into the grand scheme of things, like, we're talking thousands of vehicles at once that need to be assessed. Yeah. So
logistically, that'd be a nightmare.
Exactly, right? Yeah. So I was in that business for about a year or so, and it was like you saw the work and logistics that went into assessing vehicles, and we started going, like, for example, it took 15 minutes to assess a hail damaged vehicle, going around and counting each individual dent on each panel, any parts.
Wow.
Yeah.
Every dent.
So it took a long time. Every dent. Yeah. So I got really good at counting.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, and you get halfway through and you lose track. Back to the start.
Do you mark them? I mean, like, or do you literally Yeah, I was gonna say.
Sometimes, maybe on the roof, for example, like there's sometimes thousands. So you'll cut the roof into a quarter, not cut it, but like mark it out into a quarter, and then just count that quarter, and then multiply that by 4.
Wow.
So
that's intense.
Yeah, right. So like logistically, we were spending 15 minutes to inspect every single car, and some days we had to inspect hundreds, 200 cars, right? And that would fulfill the whole day, and you're doing that for months before you even thought about repairing the cars.
And you're out there manually with people, like actually.
Yeah. How big's your team?
Surveyor. Wow. Okay.
Well, yeah, for a site, you're talking 20, 30 assessors in a big they're almost like aircraft sheds. What do you call them? Hangars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's the size of it. When there's a hailstorm, it's huge. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
I've seen hailstorms and seen them do, a substantial amount of damage, especially if there's like a tornado, even a small one. We went through it. I live in an area where you don't typically see those, and it was devastating to the area. So I can't imagine. I guess I didn't really think about the scale of vehicles just out there, right?
Right. They're just out there. Yeah, you're not covering them. You can't cover them. It doesn't make sense to cover them, right? So
right. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a lot of lot of manual work, right? And there's probably a lot of a room for error there too, right? You miss something or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, what if you're 2 dents shy? Like, let's say you're counting and you miss 2 dents. Like, what happens then?
Yeah, that's definitely a common thing. Like the main, like when we looked at this from I guess me coming from an outsider looking in, I was blown away with how much room there was for error and how okay the insurance companies were with that. Like just and then coming back to transparency. So the people who are quoting the vehicle are the same people who are repairing it. So in my eyes, I was like, that needs to be 2 separate people.
Yeah, I was going to say separation of duties for sure.
Yeah.
So you'd spend 3-4 months assessing thousands of vehicles, and then you spend the next 1-2 years actually repairing them. So massive operations. But yeah, we looked at this, I guess, for a while, and we thought, how can we start expediting this? Because it shouldn't take this long because our resources that were, sometimes a lot of the companies, the repairers do the assessment, like the actual physical guys who do the repairs. They use that resource before they can actually do the repairs.
Yeah.
So those resources are getting held up where they should be actually repairing vehicles.
Right.
So how can we start getting those guys on the tools quicker? Was, I guess, the problem we had to solve. So we first started off with putting cameras on archways just to document the condition of a vehicle when it came in, because what we were doing, I guess another manual task, we were going around the vehicle with a camera, like clicking. We would take about 200 images of all different angles, because just to, I guess, ensure ourselves, a customer drove their vehicle in, it was all dirty and damaged, and we repaired it, cleaned it, and then they pointed out all those scratches and those things that we got the blame for.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. So it was just documenting ourselves to understand exactly how it came in, to make sure we gave it back in the same condition, if not better, to the client. So that's kind of how it started. Look, like getting at these arches, just putting GoPros on them, just to document it as it came through.
Yep.
And then that expedited the condition documenting of the car. And we had all these images, and we were thinking, how can we start quoting like as fast as we are doing this? Because 15 minutes with a team of 20, 30 guys, it's just not sustainable. And when it hails in one city, and the next week it's in another city. The resources become slightly thin.
Sure.
So that was a big problem. So that's kind of where the question came: how can we start quoting, right? So we had a few conversations with a few people who were, I guess, in the space of computer vision, so we could start learning about all that. And I guess our background wasn't IT or computer vision. We just had a problem that we needed solved.
Yeah.
So we started speaking to some people, some professionals in that area, and it became quite apparent that there is the technology out there to do that. And this is back in like 2018, 2019.
Okay. That was
before AI. So
how far back? Yeah.
It was definitely before ChatGPT. Yeah, right. When everybody thinks of AI, like AI's been going on for a lot longer, right? And And, the people who are doing it since 2018, even earlier than that, right, I think now have a distinct advantage, right? Because you've got a bunch of people that just adopted it last year when it was the hotness and, oh my gosh, it's going to change the world. But it's been changing the world slowly over time. And I think that people who started earlier have more of a muscle memory for building, designing, deploying these ML systems, right? But that's interesting though. I didn't know, even from our last conversation, Jack, whether or not you were like a real big tech person or you originated as a big tech person. And now I realize this was sort of a transformation. You're an entrepreneur that sort of, you realize that, hey, there's an outcome, right? It's an outcome driven, solution here. And the reason why you pivoted towards, hey, we need to be able to do a lot more, a lot faster, and a lot more efficiently, right? Like it's the the combination of those things, right? So yeah. And it's funny you say that. We weren't ever saying the word AI back then. We were just thinking like it was more, I guess, data driven programming. But then once we started going into when there's things that aren't correct, we can tell the system it's not correct, and then it can document that and start to learn itself. And then that's where that was probably, I guess, a 12-month gap between feeding it all that data to then realizing that we can actually have it learn itself. And I think that was kind of the tipping point where we realized, okay, this is not programming anymore. This is actually learning AI. Right.
Yeah. So it started off with counting dents on a vehicle. So rather than a person physically counting all the dents, each individual dent on the vehicle is captured and then given an individual ID, which was a real challenge because you've got a moving vehicle through a stationary gantry. So documenting that dent on the front left guard, and then it comes through and it sees that dent many times. How do we know that dent was on the front left guard compared to the one on the rear guard? So that was probably the biggest challenge of actually tracking each individual dent. And when you're talking about thousands of dents, it's a minefield.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, for sure. If you don't mind, do you mind talking a little bit about how you all did solve that, right? And really like identifying something unique versus, like you said, there's 1,000 dents on this thing. We don't know one from another.
Yeah, well, I guess I'll probably skip a step there. There was a path where we were going where we weren't actually individually giving them an ID.
Okay.
So giving it that exact characteristic. Yeah. So, and we were losing track of which dent was which at that stage. Gotcha. And then we've through trial and error and just learning, we found that it was a part of giving that one a unique ID on that specific panel with that X and Y axis, all that kind of thing.
Yes, right.
To understand exactly that was a dent, don't count that again. Because it's one thing to identify the damage, but it's a second thing to be able to quote it.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I think about, programming and, how you're really breaking things into smaller pieces to categorize them, right? So you take car, right? That's one unit, and there's, this much X, Y, Z, axis, and then it's like bing, bang, boom. You start to like, okay, now it's this quarter, right? Great. We drill down even further. Now it's this, right? Maybe it's the upper left quadrant of the quarter, right? And so you're able to sort of drill into the specific pieces, right? Which then makes it a lot easier to say, did we count this, right? Because maybe there's only 50 dents on that one, and in that once you break it down to a low enough scale, right? So no, that's definitely interesting. I mean, I'm sure what were some of the other things? So as this progressed, right? So that's one problem you solved. What were some other things that you had to solve between either like fine tuning, like you had mentioned, right? Like, hey, you did a good job, or hey, you didn't do such a good job, right? What were some of the other things that you had to kind of like hone in on, right? As the product progressed and evolved.
So if you miss a dent, that's what you said before, right? So when we were manually missing a dent.
there was like missing one or two dents.
Yeah. So it was one thing to, I guess, be able to detect damage, but then the second thing was to be able to quote it. And quoting it, you can't miss a dent. So that's how it became so important because when you're doing hail damage repairs, for example, 1 dent on the door is one price, 10 dents on the door is one price, 11 is a different price. Like adding an extra dent will change the price. So when we were looking at, I guess, moving from just identifying, because we started with just capturing the condition of the vehicle when it came in, where you would just detect damage. And detecting damage is quite easy in comparison to actually tracking it and quoting it, because quoting it means you can't miss anything because you're quoting for repair.
Yeah.
So that was probably, I guess, the biggest, movement from just being able to detect things to be able to accurately quote repairs. So being able to track each dent, and then where it is, also another thing that gets added to it is where it sits on the panel will actually also change the price. So if it's in a hard to reach area, or if it's on the lower edge of the door, there's things that I guess kind of go into the pricing matrix that we needed to be aware of. So I guess it was one thing to just detect the damage. Second thing was to accurately make sure we're not doubling up. And then third is knowing where that is on the vehicle. It was just a journey that you kind of break it into little bits and pieces. And it was I guess, probably from when we started actually looking at giving the system data to work with and using computer vision to get that feedback loop, it was probably a good 12, 16 months of just refining, driving vehicles through to kind of teach it what it needed to know. But then from there, there was all these, I guess, data reference points that feedback loop could start doing the self-learning, which is what we now call AI. But to us, it was just kind of feeding the system.
Right.
So
go ahead, Rico.
I was just going to say, so are you like feeding it like text prompts, or like how are you manipulating its behavior? Are you, to have those conversations with it? Did you have a coder on staff or some technical people you brought on to do that? Or were you able to have a system that actually responded to, say, a text prompt to say that, I want you to do this instead?
Yeah, I guess early days it was manual, like what they call annotation, which is in the computer vision space, where you're annotating exactly what you want it to see, and if it's not seeing what it should do, you're kind of telling it that they should be seeing that. If it is seeing something that's like a false positive, letting it know that that's not what we want to identify. I guess is the foundation of it. And then once that starts learning, I guess the next stage is building a user interface so users can quickly go, no, that's not right, that is right. So it's essentially annotation, but we can have other users do that at a quite easy user interface.
Yep.
Sure.
And then from there, it was kind of a system where it would look at not so much the detection, but the actual points of reference. So that's kind of how the system was doing its self-learning, was if something was identified that kind of made reference to another thing, and the evolution kind of built from that.
That's awesome.
One quick note on that. So this is really that was a great question, Rico. And I guess for listeners at home, this is one of the big differences between what everybody calls AI now, right? And AI, like let's say in 2018, 19, even 2021. Nowadays, when people think of AI, a lot of people are thinking about conversational AI, as in just what you said, Rico. It's like, was it a prompt? Did you talk to it?
Like, are you talking to it? Right.
But back then you had other methods, right? And you still do, by the way, in certain types of strategies where you're labeling, you're tagging, you're right, wrong, all these different things. And so it was much more, I'm going to call it like binary, like 0, 1, 0, 1. Yes, no, you did good, did bad, rather than where it's like have this fluid conversation. And a lot of the, as conversational AI, LLMs, started to evolve. And a lot of that was based on research with natural language processing, which is called NLP. So they started to really gather how structured language works and how, and that's, you sort of put the pieces together. Google had their transformers, right? And all these things, let's say, built on one another to enable what we call today conversational AI. So it's really been a heck of a journey, even for the field. field, right? But AI, even nowadays, right? Computer vision and these different types of predictive analytics, right? These are still extremely valuable, right? So when you're thinking about AI, folks, don't just necessarily think about, hey, it's ChatGPT and that's what AI is, right? Take a look at, even some, articles that we've written in our newsletter, or, there's plenty of articles out there on predictive analytics and, different ways that AI can improve and help, augment, let's say, humans, right? Like in your case, Jack, with your business, it's able to do, far more than you can get than humans can do by walking around a vehicle. And one question I did have is, so as you're solving these different problems, were you still then, hey, this is an arch with some GoPros, or did you have this hardware like what's behind you in your picture here yet? Or like when did that happen, right? Like when did you actually build out? Because there's a whole different thing about engineering hardware than engineering software and whatnot.
That was like, we're probably, when I was talking about that's probably 2020, 2021.
Okay.
Where we use it in our sister company. So we have three companies within our group. So one is the hail catastrophe response business. The second one is the Dent Academy, where we train on how to repair vehicles. And then today, another one is CMT Scanner, which was only commercialized in 2022. Oh. So before 2022, we were using this technology in-house for the hail company. And it's a whole different ball game when you're using it internally to when you want to go, okay, we want to give it to someone else to use.
Right.
So there was a lot that happened, I guess, in that space of 2020. 2021, 2022, a lot happened to just, I guess, start having those conversations to go, we probably put up with things that other people wouldn't put up with, I guess, from a software point of view.
Yep.
Sure.
How do we start really commercializing this for the market? So we had, like the one you see behind me, but it was enclosed at the top. That's what we used for hail. Obviously, you need to look at the roof on hail damaged vehicles.
Right.
So we had this big archway that had probably 20, 30 cameras, and each individual camera had its own CPU inside because we needed live tracking. So it's not so much, we needed live, I guess, feedback. It's not so much capturing a vehicle and then sending it off to the cloud and having that come back to you, because by the time that happened, the customer would have been standing there for 5 minutes or so. We needed that answer within seconds. So what was only out of a need was something really revolutionary. We didn't actually think it was revolutionary. We just needed that because the customer was standing there.
Right.
So I guess we have all these really cool things that we don't actually realize how cool they are, because we just had a problem that we're trying to solve. So we actually developed, live, response feedback. And then for example, when a government body found out about that, they said, we could probably use this for biosecurity. So as the cars come off the ship, do they turn left or do they turn right? Because there's bio risk or bugs, mud, leaves, seeds, things that shouldn't be on the vehicle. So when you start thinking live feedback, it becomes, there's all these different things you can start to doing, because it's really cool.
Right. And it works in multiple industries. Yeah. But so 2022 was when, actually, funny story, it was a very bad hail year. So there was no hail. So we said we need to do something with this technology, this hardware.
Yeah.
So with all our contacts, I guess, in the dealership space, we started thinking who else can use this. And in Australia, the agency model, where I guess rather than it traditionally being a franchise business, Australia is probably a place where a lot of the OEMs test things out because no one really hears about them.
There you go. It's their playground. It's their lab. Right? Yeah. I love it. it.
So we had Honda and Mercedes both moved to an agency model. So that was a bit of an alert as such to go, well, their front end revenue is probably going to drop. So they're going to look for other ways to mitigate that revenue, and it's going to be something that they can control. So what can they control?
Yeah.
Once they sell a vehicle, they need to retain that customer, and that's the kind of direct relationship. And that's why we have, I guess, dealerships, because of that relationship piece.
Yeah.
So they can control that after sales service. And then we started thinking, okay, once EVs come in, there's less moving parts on a vehicle. So they're going, what was traditionally such a fragmented industry of servicing a vehicle? Like you've got your panel and paint guy, you've got your wheel guy, you've got your tire guy. It's going to start coming all back to the dealer, because where traditionally they just used to focus on mechanics, that's not going to be such a focus once we have EVs more in the mix.
Right.
So those two things really kind of taught us that the front end revenue is going to be a challenge, and they're going to look for new ways to retain those customers. Yep. And then the second was, when they're retaining them, where's the revenue opportunity?
Right.
So we started looking at this more from not just hail, but how can we start leveraging computer vision to look at everything on the car? What's the opportunity on that car when it comes in for a mechanical service? There's all these different things that we could probably offer to the customer on the same day.
Yeah.
So that was back in 2022 when we started going, okay, let's start thinking about this.
Yeah, that's
technology.
Interesting. Yeah, well, one of the things that I was thinking of that I learned, so I'm in the communications business, and we have solutions directly for dealers. And one of the things that was different about, let's say, like franchising in like small business, quick service, and a lot of the other industries that we service and dealerships, is that you really have two main sides, right? You have your sales stuff, right? Like you're selling cars, and then you have your service side, right? And your fixed operations. And I found out that really over the last few years, they've been focusing on building revenue in service even more than sales, right? In a lot of cases, like you said, that front end revenue may be dropping, but hey, there's a recall, and oh man, well, you're in, we'll do this and we'll do this, right? So it's interesting. So now with the solutions that you're developing around that, what types of opportunities is it able to sort of suss out during their service visit?
Yeah, well, it was, I guess, the point of sitting down with the client, I guess, with the dealers that already had the relationships there, and going, what would you like to detect? Because I guess the world's your oyster with computer vision. It's great in that way of it. Essentially, it's the human eye, and you train it and you feed it the information, and you can really, whatever you want to look for, you can look for. So we kind of sat down with a blank canvas with some pilots, dealerships, and said, if you were to have a person with 20 eyes in the dealer in the service lane, what would you get them to look for? And some of those things were like, well, I don't want to increase carryovers, so I don't want vehicles to be serviced and sit here for the next day out, because that starts to impact loaner vehicles, and you need those loaner vehicles back the next day. So I guess first thing was, what can we do on the same day that's not going to have it carry over, and we can increase the average repair order? So it was things like small dent repair, which we were quite familiar with being hail. It was if there's any like gutter rash on the wheels or the rims, that can be repaired within 30-40 minutes. New tires, obviously tires are a big focus, especially with EVs. The EVs are heavier, they're wearing the tires more. So how can we start getting better at looking at each individual tire that comes in? So, some dealerships are really good where they actually employ someone to look at each tire, but when you got 100, 150 cars coming in, each having 4 tires on it, that person gets pretty backed up pretty quickly. So and it was so we had like the main things were the small dents, rim repair, tire, and then just the general condition of the vehicle, of the car when it comes in, because like some dealers were spending tens of thousands of dollars fixing like damage on vehicle that customers claim they did.
Right.
So even that in itself is like, oh, can you do that too? We're like, yeah, that'll just happen naturally. We'll do that. We'll do that.
Yeah.
And what great evidence. It doesn't get any better than a scan, that's like date time stamped and says, no, look, this is how deep that was. This is where the gash was.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So we started detecting things, and then naturally, because again, we didn't think it was that great, like because it was just second nature, but we wanted to quote it, to not just detect it, but quote it, because I guess not coming from an IT background, we needed to monetize it, because we had a problem we needed to solve, and we use this technology to monetize something. So we were able to give them a piece of technology that just didn't identify it, but also put a price next to repairing it.
That's great.
And then it just kind of evolved into, okay, we've identified something that we can sell.
Mm-hmm.
We know how much it's going to cost to repair. We then gave that information to the service advisors. And this is probably kind of right in the midst of ChatGTP, where how do we start delivering that information to the customer because we're now looking at quoting 100, 150 vehicles that we didn't human resource for. So how can we start sending that out to the customer?
Right.
And that was where conversational AI came into the picture. So how can we start leveraging that? So
that's super cool. What's the basic premise of like, how are you delivering like crafted messages? Are you, like what types of outreach are you, sending to the customer when you do find these things, right?
Yeah. So we've got that information of what it is, where it is on the car. So now we can like as soon as that car drives through the scanner, an SMS is going to the customer to say, hey, we saw a dent on your left front door. Would you like to get that fixed today during your service? The customer can write back and go, I didn't know that was there. Can you send me a picture? We've got the picture. So then it sends the picture of the dent on the left front door and says, here it is. We can get that done by 4:00 today. So where before we didn't have that piece, we were delivering it via email to the service advisor, and it wasn't getting delivered to the customer, and then they weren't getting their ROI out of the scanner because it was just that service advisor's already way too busy.
Right, exactly. That's exactly where my mind went. I said, we're providing to the service advisor. They're like, all right.
Yeah. Scanner could do 150 vehicles in a day, but the advisor, he's like 10, right?
Yeah. And it's like any technology, unless the people adopt it, it's going to fail. So if you've got a team of 10 service advisors looking at this thing going, it's feeding me so much work, I hate it.
Right.
So so it was one thing where we created this really great product, which we used internally, but giving it to someone, you had to think about how they were going to use it, which was a whole different game, what we were used to commercially. Yeah. But it was once that kind of conversational AI came into it, really just helped a lot with conversions.
Did you mention AI at all when you're looking for customers and you're bringing this thing in? I'm sure, folks that have been around service departments for quite a while, right? Some of those guys have been with dealerships probably 10, 20 years, maybe not, tech savvy. Do you mention AI at all? And if you did mention it, did they immediately go, Terminator, that type of, they're thinking like, oh no, I don't want to mess with that. I've heard about AI before. What was your experience?
Yeah, I mean, coming from a customer focused background, I didn't want this to be seen as something that was going to replace people, because I know from my experience that we still need that emotional connection, and it helps so much in that conversion. This is only a tool to assist and scale the business.
Right.
Yep.
So me coming in just saying, hey, look, this is not something that's going to replace your jobs or make more work for you, because everyone's got their own focus in the business, and if you give them one other thing to focus, it's going to impact something else, and they start looking at it negatively. So it was more about how this is the environment at the moment. This is what our future looks like, I guess, from an industry point of view. How can we work together to I guess start offering the customers more services when they're coming in for their mechanical service? Let's start thinking about other things we can elevate their experience by offering dent removal, or just being more aware of their vehicle. For example, one client uses this to, they've integrated with their vehicle appraisal software. So they drive through, and each time they come in for a service, they go, hey, your vehicle's worth X amount this time. At your next service, we project your vehicle will be worth this, which is lower. Would you like to trade it in now or not? So they're doing instant valuations.
Like a real-time depreciation. Right.
Yeah, exactly. So it's elevating that experience, but also helping the dealer retain and that whole customer life cycle.
Right.
Which is really cool, which is from an industry point of view, it's really cool.
So I did a very short stint. Most of my work has always been like government type stuff, but I did a short stint as a salesman in jewelry, very short stint while I was in college. And what's funny is so I'm hearing this model that you're talking about, and a lot of the jewelry industry, they have markup obviously on the jewelry, but so they sell the jewelry and then they sell a care plan for it, right? Some kind of service plan. And then each time the person brings in the jewelry, what do they do is like, oh, we'll clean that for you for free. But while we're cleaning it, we got to inspect it to make sure no stones come out. And what do we find during the inspection is, well, your head is a little bit, loose. You're going to lose your stone. We'll repair it. And so when I'm hearing this stuff, I'm thinking, like all of the opportunity in these industries that you're literally nailing down kind of as you find your way through. But there's so much business opportunity there, with your servicing and your repair and everything. I mean, you've done a fantastic job of integrating multiple, areas of that. So I'm just really impressed, Jack, with how this thing has really come together for you.
It's funny, the automotive version of that, which is exactly the same, they offer dent-free packages. So same thing, right? So every time you come and get your service, like you'll buy it at the front end when you buy your vehicle, you'll pay for a package that is a dent-free package. So each time you come in and get your service, we'll remove all the dents for you. So why would you go somewhere else when you've got this dent-free package with this franchiser?
Yep.
So you'll come back there and get your dents out every time. But when it's driving through the scanner, we've also detected that you need new tires. So let's put new tires on the same time. So it's just that natural customer life cycle, and it's good for the customer. It's not like
is.
I think the coolest thing about this is that we use it internally. So it's like we love the product. We know what it can do. So we're not trying to convince using it. Yeah, we're not trying to convince people it's the right thing to do. We know how much it helped us. Yeah, and it's just a point of sharing it now.
Wow.
That's awesome. What types of things are on the horizon for you, or what kind of future vision and advice do you have for people that are looking to leverage AI, right? With whatever that means for them, right? Like, what type of advice would you give people as they're considering leveraging AI and they don't really know how to go about it or how it might benefit them? What would you think their next step or their first steps would be towards that, possible solution?
Yeah, there's heaps of noise, isn't there, out there about AI? So it's like, where do you start? I want to use it, but I don't know where to start. And it's how do I make sure it's going to be worthwhile? Do I wait until it's more mature? I think it comes back to everything. If you're going to invest time and resources and money into something, make sure it's got an ROI. Which just comes naturally to us because we built it for the problem, and we built it. Cost a lot of money to build, so we need an ROI out of it ourselves.
Sure.
So I think with any AI, don't just do it for the sake of the buzzword. Do it for the sake of you going to get and back to the customer journey and experience. Make sure it gives you an ROI, but also enhances the customer experience.
Yeah.
For example, there's been many times where we've been asked to come out to a dealership site, and I've just said that just this driveway, it's a multi-use driveway, like smaller sites probably where you get the same, it just won't fit. It won't work there. So there's been times where I've just said to them that this is not going to work for you here, which I guess with the hardware, and there's certain things that people just want to jump onto the bandwagon of AI, but sometimes it's not the right time or it's not the right site. So what we see with the dealerships, we see about 65% of cars that come through have damage, and then it's about 30% of that group that can be repaired at the same day.
Okay.
So once you kind of look at that, and we quote that up, and that's like, to give you an example, there's a dealership that does about 1,000 services a month. So that's about 50 services a day. So not a big site.
Okay.
But of that same day repair group, they're getting about a 28% conversion on those quotes they're sending out, which 12 months before they had this wasn't even, I guess, offered.
Right.
So it's just pure incremental revenue, which if you kind of start going down that route and you look at, okay, these are the numbers, this is how it stacks up. We can get a 20% conversion if we send these out, and we're going to repair at an average repair cost of $320. You kind of start running through the numbers, which is what I do with every client before we even go out on site let's talk about if it actually stacks up.
Right.
Because if it doesn't stack up, don't just jump on the bandwagon. And make sure you partner with people who can show you that they can produce an ROI. There's a lot of, I guess, as we say, noise out there about it.
Yeah.
And they'll give, I guess, projections of the positives, but actually not have anything tangible, which comes second nature to us. So
that's great. Yeah. So you're showing not just, hey, this is what we're looking at, possibly giving you for an ROI. You're saying, hey, we this dealership experienced this. We know these metrics and numbers from experience, and not just from this is what we're guessing or we think or even AI predicted you're gonna get this type of ROI, right? You're actually backing that up with tangible past results and wins, right? And I'm sure that I think one of the things, like going back to what you said about, like there's a lot of noise out there, and don't start with the solution, start with the problem, I think is kind of where you were going with that. This is my take as well, that rather, even with technology, I am a technologist, but I believe that business and customer experience and customers and the business should drive technology, never the other way around, right? So it's just like anything in business, right? Figure out like what's that problem, and it might not be something sexy, right? It might be something, hail dents are not sexy.
You're right.
But guess what? You solved a serious problem, right?
Multiple.
Right, exactly. Multiple. UPS being able to deliver packages and have a super, efficient and optimized delivery methodology is not sexy, but like it ends up giving a lot more of an ROI, as you say, right? So you're going to see those revenue gains or revenue savings, right? You could generate value by savings or generating revenue, and in your case, you're actually providing a product that does both, right? That both saves you money and gives you opportunities for more revenue. So, Jack, this is very exciting stuff. I mean, this it's really been great to kind of dig in and really understand sort of where the product came from, right? Because I did wonder. I'm like, man, did he just get the idea for this one day? But I figured that wasn't the case. You did get the idea for it, but it was over time, right? There was an evolution, and it's exciting to hear your story. Do you have, as we start to kind of close in on the end of the episode here, did you have anything else that you wanted to, share with listeners, about really anything?
Yeah, I think from just what we were just talking about, we're very focused on the long term and the sustainable length of AI and where it can take us as I guess, don't want to get too far, but I guess as a human race, not getting too caught up in what it is and how we use it and everything. So we just look at it as a tool that's going to assist people to scale their business, and not just, I guess, putting it in at the moment. Like we see many dealers just look to put it in just because they want to be seen as the first movers in the industry, and having that AI in their driveway to look good. But unless it's going to be sustainable, because that dealer principal will move in 3 years' time or whatever it may be, and then the new one will come in and go, "What's this thing in our driveway? Get rid of it. It's not actually making ROI."
Right.
So we just want to make sure that we're providing really good technology to last generations, and to help, I guess, the human race in the way that we want to change the way the world manage their vehicles. Our long-term goal is to have these freestanding where anyone can just drive through, get a health check, make sure the vehicles on the road are safe, and know the value of the asset. Like if we want to keep thinking about the future, we're talking about autonomous vehicles. So we're going to have our cars drop us off at work, go pick someone else up, and then at the end of the day, it's going to come back to there's probably going to be larger fleet organizations. So as these cars come back to the fleet, are they safe to go back on the road the next day? Like that's kind of where we're thinking. We want to look at this as a whole industry pitch change. Movement. So it's definitely something we're passionate about. Just being involved from an industry point of view rather than just a commercial.
Can you say anything on the government aspect of it? I mean, the government must be pretty interested in it. I can think of more than a handful in my experience. I have some military, some law enforcement, a bit of a background there, and I can think of a lot of applications. Especially, I think I saw on your LinkedIn, was there an anti-terror aspect to it? You have a background?
Well, it's like, as I said earlier, it's just computer vision, right? So if you teach it what things shouldn't be there.
Right.
And then it knows what is there, and if there's anything that shouldn't be there, let's flag that before it goes to a secure location.
Yep.
When you start thinking about like the Olympics, like there's lots of vehicles running around during the Olympics.
Yep.
How do we make sure every car that's in that vicinity is safe?
There's
all those kind of things. Yeah.
It beats the mirror on a stick, right? With the little wheels on it that we look under cars with. So
right.
Yeah. I've had conversations with the guys who are doing that, and they're like, "Oh, how are we not using this? Like, we're still literally have a mirror on a wheel."
Yep. Or they have the scanner that kind of shoots X-ray through it, but those are like big, and they only have them in certain areas. And it's fascinating, Jack. They're really, really, really fascinating stuff.
The fun part is we've just got to ground ourselves, because there's so many things where this could be used. And it's just about making sure we give it to the right markets at the right time. But it's definitely a fun, exciting place to be.
Yeah, no, that's exciting stuff. Jack, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm just going to do a quick shout out to the human side of AI. This is where we ended up meeting you. We ended up, the Wednesday Clubhouse. You were talking about your product. Rico and I were like, we should talk to that guy and see if
definitely talk to that guy. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. Because I think what you're doing is really interesting. I know you're across the world. You're our first international guest, so I guess we're an international show now. And just appreciate having you on here. Looking forward to talking more in the future and keep it in touch.
Yeah, we'd love to have
absolutely.
you in the future, Jack. For real, especially.
Definitely. Our product is global. We install the hardware, and then everything's, I guess, a SaaS product. So
nice.
We were in the US last week, and that's, I guess, our focus for expansion. So I'm sure we'll bump into you guys pretty soon.
I hope so.
Excellent. That's great stuff.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot, Jack.
All
Thanks,
right.
everybody.
Yep.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, so Rico, that was a fantastic episode with Jack. A lot of insights, and enjoyed hearing his story and kind of the evolution of that product. I thought it was really great that, that two couple things. One, that he's not like a super technical guy, right? Like
right.
He was looking for an outcome. And two, that they were using, AI before, let's say, its heyday, right?
Before it was cool.
Before it was cool, right? And so it's really great to hear their successes. So not only did they utilize AI for their core offering, right, and the evolution of that, they also, once conversational AI started to become, let's call it, ready for production, they determined that there were ways that they could leverage and utilize it, and not just for fun, but for a real benefit with that two-way texting that he was talking about. Yeah. That is just an absolutely beautiful use of these tools, right? So just a great overall episode. We're now international, folks. If you didn't hear, we're kind of a big deal over here. Right. And Rico, did you have any kind of last takeaways before we take it out here?
Just want to say, a big thank you to Jack and for sharing all the information he did. It's really awesome to see, like you said, the evolution. I think that's probably the best word for it, and the entrepreneurial spirit where they saw a problem. He started working, to figure out that problem, and really stayed within the confines of what he got from the hospitality industry. And I have a friend that has a studio. We've used him before, actually. Nomad Studios comes from the hospitality realm. That's what his background is in, and watching that progression and how they build that out into businesses, and they offer the best customer service, and they're very charismatic. So really, really happy to have Jack offer up to come on the show and share his information with us, and I look forward to speaking with him in the future as his businesses progress, for sure. So thanks again, Jack.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks to Jack for coming on the show. Folks, one thing that we do want to quickly mention is, I'm feeling a little bit, I'm looking at the subscriber count here on YouTube. And if you're loving what we're doing here on the podcast, with the newsletter and whatnot, we'd really appreciate a like on our video. And subscribe to the channel. You'll get the latest and greatest from us whenever we're releasing. We haven't released a ton aside from the podcast episodes recently, because Rico and I have been a little bit busy. We've been doing some things, so
all kinds of things.
but I do foresee us building out more of that short form content, right? Those shorts that I've gotten a lot of good feedback on. So thanks everybody for joining us here, and we will see you back in the lab soon.
See you, everybody.
And we want to give a big shout out to Nick from Nomad Studios in Scarborough, Maine, offering mixing and mastering, recording, post-production, and so much more. If you're interested in looking into Nick's services, he has mastered our audio on a few of our episodes here. He can be found at nomadstudios.pro. That's nomadstudios.pro in Scarborough, Maine. Big thank you to Nick. Thanks a lot, man.
Antics, baby.